My name is Charles Jensen, Senior Vice President for Inland Securities Corporation, coming to you live from Santa Monica, California. I'm here today with a few panelists, Mr. Bill Exeter, CEO of Exeter 1031 Exchange, Mr. Dan Wagner, Senior Vice President, Government Relations Director for Inland Real Estate Group, and the famous Mr. Greg Burns with IPX 1031 Exchange. We decided today as an industry to create a panel to talk about some of the new legislation that's happening out there in Washington, D.C. I think a lot of you heard the proposal for one of President Biden's new plans that's going to help out seniors and childcare. They're talking about limiting the 1031 exchange to $500,000. Now, this is talk. This hasn't happened yet. This is something that might go into a bill. And our goal today is to talk about the 1031 exchange, talk about what's happening in Washington, D.C., and help to answer questions. You'll see a Q&A box. If you toggle to the top or bottom of your screen, you can ask any questions you'd like. We're going to do a couple questions amongst the panelists first, and then we're going to open up to everyone to ask questions of any of the panelists. So we'll hope to answer every question that comes in as we're doing this. Just to start off, I wanted to do a little shameless plug of Inland, who we are, just for 1 minute. I think a lot of you know that we're started by 4 Chicago teachers back in the 60s. These teachers started buying properties to supplement their income. What happened was in 1967, they formed their company. 68, they incorporated. A lot of teachers started giving them money to invest because they're using the faculty lounge phone. Through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and today, they bought almost every asset class of commercial real estate. Today, we're the 8th largest commercial property owner in the United States of America. By 1989, we became the largest landlord of Walmart in the nation. Today, we're the largest sponsor of DSTs, and we help to do advocacy within our industry on 1031 exchanges. And I wanted to bring on Mr. Dan Wagner, our Director of Government Relations at Inland, to kind of give us a State of the Union as to set the stage for what's happening in DC and what we can do about it. Dan.
Oh my gosh, it's great to be here, everybody. What an exciting time, right? You know, just when we were getting bored and life was just going along, we have some exciting stuff that's happened. So during the presidential campaign, we all got to see that we had the President Biden's campaign was able to say they wanted to eliminate the 1031 exchange and to get rid of stepped up basis and double capital gains, all the, as Charles said, to help pay for childcare, free college, healthcare, that kind of stuff. And so our industry has come together, and we working actually with the Federation of Exchange Accommodators and with the National Association of Realtors and IPA and DISA, all the the different groups that we're part of, NAREIT, ICSC, Real Estate Roundtable, the Mortgage Bankers Association, the Commercial Real Estate Finance Council, all these groups. We were doing Zoom calls with all these different members of the House Ways and Means Committee and with members of the Senate Finance Committee. Because the Senate Finance Committee is the official committee that has to handle all tax issues in the Senate, and the House Ways and Means Committee is, that's where taxes first start when you talk about raising taxes. So those two committees are really, really super important. We had the election, and we got to see that Congress is just barely, the House is barely majority Democrat, and the Senate is barely majority. Actually, it's tied, but with Kamala Harris being the vice president, it's now one vote to the Democrats. So the idea of passing any of these bills or ideas that the president has, it can't happen through the normal process that they have. The House could pass because they have the majority, however slim, but the Senate is tied, and it's super, super close with having the vice president to be able to break a tie. And we have the filibuster rule, which means you have to have 60 votes to pass anything. So what we're looking at is a thing called reconciliation. And reconciliation means that every time you do a budget, you have the ability to do a reconciliation bill, which means you only need a simple majority in both the House and Senate. And so for the COVID Relief Act that President Biden put out, he passed that for 1.9 trillion, and that passed like through reconciliation. And now, and that was for FY21 budget because President Trump did not pass an FY21 budget. So that's how that's how President Biden was able to do it. Now for FY22 budget, the president has highlighted that he's going to do infrastructure, and the first section of the infrastructure bill, everybody got to see that he wants to raise corporate tax rates. There's not a bill yet, but he said he wanted to raise it to 28%. And then the senator from West Virginia, Muchin, said that he wants to only raise it to 25%. So it looks like 25% will be the number. So the power exists with Democrat senators to be able to have more of a control of the agenda. So at this moment, the idea of doing a major infrastructure program through tax increases on business, that's what people think is going to happen. And then last week, we were having a lot of discussions with all the different leaders in the House Ways and Means Committee, the different leaders in the Senate Finance Committee. And interestingly enough, I was on the phone, I can't tell you with who, but I was on the phone with a very prominent Democrat leader right before all this came out. And he informed me that the 1031 was fine and nothing was going to happen. And all the different groups we talked to, they all basically said the same thing. Everything's going to be fine. Within 24 hours, the president put out his proposal, and that's where they threw in there, they're going to cap the 1031 at $500,000. Well, that blew everybody's mind because no one expected that. The positive thing, because we're always the cup is half full. So the positive thing is that the president campaign said they wanted to eliminate the 1031. So they wanted to eliminate it. Our coalition, we did all this work with the FEA, all the groups I highlighted. And now he's come out with this plan, and that's to cap it at 500,000. Obviously, it's still, we all know that kills it, but at least they see the benefit of having 1031. So that's, the cup is half full. Now, what we have to do as an industry, we have to get a bucket of cold water and throw it on these guys and gals and let them know why this is not a good thing to do. So that's a very important thing for all of us to be able to work on as an industry and as individuals. This is a time that if you played sports in your life, you know what game day is, and this is now game day. We know that when Michael Jordan goes up to do a layup during a big game, you know, boy, he's going to do it. Well, you know he's going to do it because he makes sure in practice to dot every I and cross every T, and that's what we're asking all of us to do because we are coming together as an industry. We have to not sit on our couch, not just assume that, Charles Jensen and Inland and, oh my gosh, Bill Exeter and Exeter Qualified Intermediary, Greg Burns and IPX 1031, all these, they're going to do it. I don't have to worry about it. No, all of us need to be able to rise up and call your congressman or woman. And the big thing right now is that they need to make sure that your members of Congress let Congressman Richie Neal. So Congressman Rich Neal is from Massachusetts. He's the chairperson of the House Ways and Means Committee. He is all powerful in our lives right now because it's up to him as to what gets put into the bill. So all these ideas that President Biden has, President Biden just can throw out ideas, but actually the House Ways and Means Committee has to put the bill together. So we want to make sure that the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee says, boy, President Biden, I love you, but we're not going to put this in there. That's our whole goal in life right now. It looks like Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has highlighted to the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee that she wants to pass a bill that for infrastructure, which is reconciliation. It's not a regular bill, but a reconciliation. She wants to pass this before the July 4th recess. So it's a pretty quick process, and we all are working on this, but we need your help to make sure to engage your member of Congress. So what else is going on with what the president's highlighted? So that's obviously the 1031. The other thing is that, talking to the U.S. Chamber, the overall global aspect of what the president talked about is pretty shocking in some ways, because it's pretty dramatic. To raise the personal income tax from 37 to 39.6%. You're going to be looking at capital gains going from 20%, and then when you add on the Obama medical care tax, really bringing it up to 43.4%, and then you add on the state tax, that's bringing it to basically 50% for capital gains. So that's a really, really big deal. It's a really big deal. They're going to end the carried interest, and then there's this whole thing of stepped up basis is another issue. They have they're not going to touch that, but they're going to tax the capital gains at death at the capital gains rate. So huge amounts of money will be needed for people's estates to pay. So lots and lots of stuff. We have these big overall organization like the U.S. Chamber that's fighting the overall big picture. What we're doing is that we're the champions for the 1031, and we're going after getting the $500,000 cap off the 1031. Now, how is this possible? So when you look at all of what President Biden wants to do, he wants to pay for a lot of stuff. So since he wants to pay for a lot of stuff, this capital gains thing is obviously a huge number, but we're not a big number. The idea of having the $500,000 cap on the 1031, we have wonderful industry data that from the Ernst & Young study and also the study for the Lean Petrova studies, we know that the idea of getting rid of elimination of the 1031 is only about a $40 billion number. That's out of, a lot of money to you and me, but when you're talking trillions, that's just a tiny bit. It's not the big kahuna that they need to pay for stuff. So the interesting thing is that all these studies show that when you eliminate the 1031, because that's what they'd be doing by getting rid of by capping at 500,000, you're getting rid of the local transfer taxes, because obviously everyone knows that the idea of buying and selling properties is going to go way down, because people are just going to hold on to it so they don't have to deal with the tax. And that stops the synergistic aspect that we've all talked about, what happens to the economy with 1031 and jobs. And so you have the local real estate transfer tax, the local state real estate transfer tax, and then the federal income taxes that are created with all the different jobs, because there's like 568,000 jobs that are created because of 1031, the synergy in the economy. So that's over like $70 billion. So it's a net loss of taxes for the taxpayers. I mean, so it's like, why do this? It just doesn't make any sense. So the good news is that we know that different leaders of the Democrat Party told us 24 hours before this plan came out that the 1031 is fine. So obviously this was tacked on at the last second by somebody in the Biden administration. So that's a good thing. It's not a real thoughtful, planned out aspect. The second thing is that it's not going to be a ton of money for this Biden plan, and actually it's going to hurt governments all around, from the locals to the state to the federal. So those are some really important things to be aware of. Now, one of the other things that we're doing is that we're doing a lot of discussions, and we're talking to every member of Congress that we can. And right after this call, immediately after this call, I'm going to be on a call with Congressman Danny Davis in Illinois, and he is a terrific guy. He is on the House Ways and Means Committee, and he's actually called together Congressman Brad Schneider, who is another House Ways and Means Committee Democrat, and then he's called Congressman Ray LaHood, who's a Republican on the House Ways and Means Committee. And I'll be talking to them about all these things I'm talking to you about, but I also will be highlighting a couple other things too. I will be highlighting that the 1031 is the 401k of real estate. So that's a big important discussion point, because the 1031 is a hard thing for some people to understand, but everybody has a 401k plan. All of the folks who are staff members for Congress are like 22 years old. They're very young. And so to be able to explain to them, this is the 401k of real estate. With your 401k, you put in pre-tax dollars and grow your wealth. And then eventually when you retire, you take that money out and that's when you pay the tax. Same thing with real estate, where people are growing their wealth, their portfolio, and then eventually it's pre-tax. And then eventually they sell it and they're able to pay when they get out. That seems to be something that is resonating with staff members because it's a very complicated thing. So keep it at a very high level. So that's one. Two, the farm world, big deal. Farmers are dirt rich and cash poor. Farmers use the 1031, as all of you know, through redoing their plots of land, bringing things closer together to be able to have operations closer so you don't have combines going all over the place. When they sell to retire, they do a 1031 into an apartment complex to give them money. I mean, so on and so forth. You get it. So the farming's a big deal. The other aspect to this is that the conservation world is really into 30 by 30. So actually President Biden will be talking about the 30 by 30 plan, I think today. It's 30% of America's land wants to be made into open space by 2030. That's what all of the big conservation organizations want to have happen. How do I know it? Well, inland, because of Dan Goodwin, and Mr. Goodwin is a big conservationist. I represent inland on the Conservation Foundation Board of Directors, which is an affiliate of the Land Trust Organization. These organizations were inland's part of that family. And we found out that this 30 by 30 plan is a huge deal for all of the conservation world. And all these people know that there's not a chance they're going to be able to protect this land if the 1031 is capped at 500,000, because we all know that a farmer is going to only 1031 it so they don't have to pay all the tax money. So that's the conservation thing. The other aspect of this is unions. Why would unions care about this? Well, the unions, again, inland's very involved politically. We know a lot of folks because of Mr. Goodwin and his relationships. So we had a meeting with the IBEW, our local IBEW that represents DuPage County outside of the Chicago area, just right of the collar counties. And they highlighted that, yeah, Dan, we like this Ernst & Young study. There's 568,000 jobs that are created. We like that. We get it. But really, what's really important is that you didn't know this, and I didn't know this. The private unions, like the electrical workers, the plumbers, the masons, they all fund their pensions privately. They're not public employee union pensions. So for them, the value of their pension dollar is everything. And our local IBEW has a very large percentage of their pension is funded. It's not 100%, but it's pretty close compared to Illinois, where I think pensions are funded at like 20%. So the REITs are a big deal. REITs are a big amount of money that this organization and a ton of other unions invest in. So we were able to show them through Dan Cullen from Baker McKenzie, who was able to do a report that we were able to give them, and they got to see that, yes, indeed, 1031s are very important for REITs because they have to pay out all their money through dividends. So they have to use the 1031 as a way to repurpose portfolios, to sell buildings. I mean, so they don't get to do the tax. So it's a very important tool for REITs. The other thing that is important is the concept of diversity and inclusion. In areas that are food, like I have a great example. There's in areas that are like a food desert, like in the south side of Chicago, there was Ida B. Wells tenement building that was torn down, thank God, and it was sat vacant for about 15 years. We had, there was a developer that put in a Mariano's, which is a really nice grocery store in this area that had no places for people to buy food. It was just amazing. A big investment firm from New York came in and they 1031'd it, and a ton of extra capital came zooming into this area called Bronzeville, and it just refurbished the area with jobs, housing. I mean, it was just like a breath of fresh air. It's just terrific. The other thing is that because Mr. Goodwin has inland so involved with the realtors, the fair housing laws, and those kind of things, we're super involved with the realtors. I'm the past president of the Chicago Association of Realtors, and I've gotten to work with a lot of African Americans, and and different minority groups. And one of the things they highlight is that because of like Jim Crow laws and because of horrible problems that have happened with housing in the past for the African American world, the big issue for them is generational wealth. That their generational wealth has not been passed down among generations, and so the 1031 is a great opportunity that everybody else in the world is. Everybody has the opportunity to use the 1031. Why now would you eliminate the 1031? Because it's so important to help build generational wealth for people, no matter what color or any aspect of who you are. There's no barrier to doing the 1031. Anybody can do it. And why cut that off for people wanting to help build wealth throughout their lives and their families' lives? So these are some really important things, and I wanted to highlight this is what we're doing. So Charles, you asked me you say what time is it, Dan? I'll tell you how to build Big Ben. So I'm talking on and on and on. So if you want me to stop there, I can, or I can continue on for the next hour. So why don't I stop there?
I think that's a great starting point, Dan. Really appreciate that State of the Union. It helps set the stage for the call today. First, I wanted to bring on Mr. Bill Exeter, CEO of Exeter 1031 Exchange, to ask a few questions of you, Dan.
Sure. Thank you, Dan. That was fantastic. And I kind of wanted to re-emphasize, too, that the 1031 exchange is not for the super wealthy like a lot of people think. I mean, our average client is just Joe Blow investor off the street. And I think that's what a lot of people have a misconception about, is it actually is a average Joe Blow investor as opposed to that super wealthy. So these are some of the questions that our clients have been asking. And one kind of goes back to the $500,000 cap. A lot of people are confused about that. And it's clear that if the gain was under 500,000, you could still do a 1031 exchange. If the gain was over 500, and this is where the questions and the confusion are coming in, is does it cap it so that you can still do a 1031 exchange and defer the first $500,000 and everything above that would be taxable, or does it eliminate the ability to do a 1031 exchange if your gain exceeds 500,000?
That's a really good question. It's very difficult to answer that because President Biden just put these things out there without any explanation. So interestingly enough, the qualified intermediaries I've spoken to say could be either way, because it's just painted with a broad brush. So it's still unknown what will happen because it's not in bill. Once it goes to the bill form, but we know that it's not going to go to the bill form because you and myself and Charles and Greg and everybody on this call are going to make sure and call their members of Congress so it doesn't get into the bill. So that's the biggest thing in the world, is don't get into the bill. But that's the reality, is that no one officially knows. They just know the broad brush. That's it.
And certainly all the things I've read out there, there are so many opinions flying around that underscores exactly what you see out there. Nobody has a clue at this point in time. I'm glad you hit that nail on the head, which is it's not about the coalition or just a few of us. Everybody has to get involved and weigh in, give them their opinion, and really tell them this is a bad thing. So one of the things, unlikely, or aside from the usual concern that clients have, that this may affect the 1031 exchange, et cetera, many of them are asking questions about timing. And I think you mentioned that Pelosi would like to see this done by the July 4th break. So can you comment kind of on timing, effective dates? A lot of people are concerned it could be retroactive.
Sure. So I just was on a call with the National Association of Realtors with Evan Lydiard, who is just a rock star, brilliant. He's a professor at American University. He's worked for Warren Hatch for 20 years. He's worked for the realtors for 20 years. There's nobody that knows tax better than him and the process. So I'm all prepared with the expert telling you from the experts is that, so it looks like the House is going to get something. They want to get this thing passed by July, and then it goes over to the Senate. The Senate Finance Committee works on this, and they believe that would happen in the fall. And then if it passes, then it would be up to the president to sign, which he would. So God forbid, let's say they put the 1031 in there and they get it passed, both the House and Senate, and the president signs it. So what happens then? So Evan Lydiard said, with his experience in life, not Dan Wagner's experience, but he said in his experience, they are not going to retroactive anything. They won't retroactive capital gains tax. They won't retroactive 1031. No retroaction at all. Everything starts anew January 1st of 2022. So, obviously people are very interested in getting their DSTs, their 1031s, all that stuff done now to sell their things because they want to make sure to know. But the thing that's true is that if the House does rejects this, which we know they're going to, because all of you are going to make sure that happens, then we will know by July 4th. So if we all work really hard between now and July 4th, it'll make the rest of the summer so much more relaxing for us all. So that's a big deal that we get this out of Richie Neal, out of his vision and viewpoint. And again, talk to your members of Congress to have them talk to Richie Neal.
Hey, Bill, you mind if I inject a question here real quick?
Sure.
Dan, isn't it somewhat unconstitutional to make a tax retroactive? Is that true or false?
False. You were able to do it. They did that in the 80s. So that's where some people in the call, they're like, well, I was here in the 80s, and they know that they did it. But because of politics and the way things are at this moment, that's why Evan says there's no appetite. There's not a chance that's going to happen. There's like a 1% chance, because there is a chance. It's still legal to do it, but in the days of Washington right now, it's just not going to be part of it.
I guess I missed the 80s. On that note, let's go back to Mr. Exeter.
Thanks. I appreciate that one. Let's see. Somewhere here there must be an eject button. My last question is, the last attempt, which was about 5 years ago, to remove 1031 exchanges, that was actually taken out of the bill, really basically at the 11th hour. And so I think everyone here would agree that this is really an educational issue. And that's how we saved 1031 exchanges the last time. And you've kind of touched upon this, but I think it's important for everyone on the call to realize, like you've said, this is not about the coalition or a few of us. This is about everyone on the call picking up the phone, getting on their email, and reaching out. So can you maybe kind of elaborate on how they can do that, how they can help fight the fight?
Sure. We have the IPA, Institute for Portfolio Alternatives, has a really good website. It's the www.ipa.com/1031s, and you click on that, and it'll zoom you to advocacy, and you click on advocacy, and you're able to take action. Type in your home address. It'll come up with who your congressman or woman is, and you hit send, and it'll send an email right there to them. The other thing you can do is you'll know who your congressman or woman is, and then you should Google them, call their office. That's even better, and say, hey, I live in the district and I've done 1031s. That's what's so cool about everybody on this call is that you know what a 1031 does for people. In your life experience that you have helped people, and this is why you feel good about getting up every day to go to work, because this is part and parcel of helping people, and that's what we like to do. There's not a person who I've met in this industry that is not a person that likes helping. Everybody likes helping folks, and give your personal experience. So the phone call is even better. A personal meeting is even like unbelievable. I think that would be a great thing too. Clearly, you might not have the opportunity to meet with the elected official, but meeting with that staff person and going through these concepts of a 401k of real estate. Because right now, as Bill Exeter highlighted, they're thinking that you are a billionaire because you have $500,000. They think, oh my gosh, man, oh man. But to understand real estate, when you start talking in terms of 401ks, the average 401k is like 500,000 in the United States. So just think about those kind of thoughts. And you're educating 22-year-olds about these things. And once they start realizing, wow, that's a big deal. And quite honestly, the other one is the generational wealth is really really a big deal as well. The people are really paid attention to that. And then the 30 by 30, the land isn't, they're not making any more land. And those are important topics. So I know that that if you, Charles has I've written 3 articles related to these things. If you want to get more in depth, Charles has those 3 articles. He can send them to you. Just ask him for them. They were on the Agent magazine. And please, anything we can provide you with data, but you have to take up your time and energy to make this happen. So.
Excellent. Bill, any more questions for you?
That's it for me.
All right, let's jump over to Mr. Greg Burns with IPX 1031 Exchange. Greg, I know you have some questions, right?
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that generational wealth thing that you were talking about, and it's really not 1030 run related, but if you think about transferring generational wealth, especially when the minorities, wouldn't a step up in basis be like a big hit to transferring that generational wealth?
So the stepped up basis, this is what's interesting. They're not getting rid of the stepped up basis, although that's what people think. It's the capital gains at death that would kill generational wealth too, because they get the heirs get the property, but they have to pay this huge amount of money to pay the capital gains, and to pay that would, for some instances, they'd have to, farmers would have to, the farm kids have to sell the farm and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Now, a lot of our clients call us and ask us, we know that 1031, obviously the president's come out about it. They talk about raising capital gains tax rates. What should we do now? Do you think it's a good time to sell and exchange? We're concerned obviously about, it being retroactive. Obviously you've addressed that issue. What kind of guidance do you think? I know that, obviously you're looking at it from a political standpoint, but what kind of guidance do you think to give our customers at this point? Obviously, we want to tell them to reach out to their congressman, but you think it's a good time for them, a safe time for them to do exchanges and not worry about, the consequences of potentially, them limiting 1031?
I honestly think it's probably the best time to do it. I think if you want to be, conservative people who have all their wealth tied up in a property, you can take the bet that you're going to wait, and I think we're going to win this. But you also can take care of your family and everything, and just the best way for sure is if the bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush, is to do your DSTs now, to sell your stuff now, and to take care of your clients that way. So I think now is probably a good time.
Now, if they pass this bill through the House, do we have some allies, in the Senate who, think that 1031 is good for the economy, that may actually speak up and say, hey, I know Joe Manchin is, he's weighed in on certainly on several issues. He seems to be a kind of a key senator, when it comes to passing these things. Are there any people in the Senate that kind of believe, in 1031, that they kind of believe in that process that would maybe help benefit us?
Well, first, that's a good question. First, I want to highlight that that Mike Thompson in the House is he's like one of the number 2 people on the House Ways and Means Committee. He represents Napa Valley. He's championing the cause for the 1031 right now. So he's working with members of the House Ways and Means Committee. So that's the House Ways and Means. But Chairman Neal is in charge. So he's the guy in charge of deciding it. In the Senate, one of the most important people, Manchin's a great guy, but one of the most important people who lost the Senate for this is Christine Sinema from Arizona. If anybody happens to know Christine Sinema in a personal level, that's key. I mean, that is one of the most important things, to get to her and say, hey, this is a big deal. So if you know Christine Sinema, yes, that's probably the most important person.
Didn't Charles date her at one point, I thought? No?
I used to live in Arizona, and it's interesting because she operates in a moderate district, and she's operated that way. So she might get a lot of pressure from her constituents, to do this. And I think there's some meetings behind the scenes where people are trying to meet with her to talk about this.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a disguised yes to your question?
I was trying to kind of work him over on the old 80s comment that he gave to you there, Bill. So I was trying to help you out a little
I
bit.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the replay, I'm going to cut this section out right here.
Yeah, perfect.
Keep going, Greg.
Yeah, I think I'm going to turn it over. I see that there's a fair amount of questions that have kind of come from the audience. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at that, but I want to be sure that we, are mindful actually of their time and maybe see if there's some questions in there that we haven't asked yet.
Yeah, let me pull some of these questions out here, and this is open to all the panelists, so feel free to jump in on these questions. This first one from Kevin is actually a really good question. Under the proposed law, could you break a $5 million 1031 exchange into 10 different $500,000 exchanges? Is that a workaround?
We don't know that. I mean, I can't imagine that'd be a workaround, but it could be. But it just is so. We just know the broad brush that the president put out there. That's all we know. But politically, I think that wouldn't fly.
Depending on how the bill comes out, right?
Right.
Although we had one client 2 weeks ago that we were chatting with, and his objective right now is to sell one large asset and buy a whole bunch so the gain is split up over a bunch of small single families. So that may be a strategy to use today just in case.
And you can use that strategy with a DST because the minimum's 100,000.
That's true. Yep, absolutely.
Steve asked a question: Is the $500,000 cap set in stone or is it negotiable?
So nothing's in stone at this moment. It's just President Biden. It's in stone for President Biden, but nothing's in stone at all for anybody. There's no bill. There's absolutely no bill. I can't say House Bill 2025. There's no bill that exists. So that's why before the bakers are putting this together, we got to get a hold of Richie Neal through your congressman or woman and let them know don't do this.
Another question is: we know that Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona both oppose any of the filibuster. Do you think they'll hold out and vote against something like this with the pressure from their constituents?
I think that you have to, as Mark Twain said, you got to walk in the moccasins of somebody for a mile or whatever, and then you get to know where they're coming from. If I'm the senator from West Virginia, one of the realities is that 1031s are not a big deal in West Virginia. So, I think that he's a very good man and has some good ideas, but I don't think he's going to be the champion just from that. And my gut tells me. I think that Kyrsten Sinema, I think that's a better chance because I think the 1031s are important more on the West Coast, and that's my experience. I do want to go back and say one thing that I told Greg. So when Dan Wagner is suggesting, hey, to sell, I'm not saying the inland is suggesting to sell, or that's got to be, you have to talk to your individual, you have to go through all your due diligence and figure out what to do. So I'm not suggesting by any means that you go out and sell tomorrow, but so that's for our compliance division. So I want to make sure that I like that.
I got a question here. What is the average size of a 1031 exchange? Greg or Bill?
I think that's tough to define. I think if you looked at it over the course of the entire country, you might get different answers. Obviously I'm based here primarily in California. And so I would say last month, the average size deal gross sales price was just over $1 million of equity for my transactions. I think it was $1.2 million. So I do a fair number of commercial deals. So I think the challenge when you're talking about, how is this going to impact, everybody's exchanges? If you talk about, deals maybe in the Midwest where there's not as big of a gain, you may not have as much impact. But where you're going to run into issues is, the biggest hit asset classes of, coming out of this pandemic are going to be office and retail. Those are both very expensive asset classes. And if people don't have the ability to kind of trade in and out of those and use the money from this 1031 to, kind of do some redevelopment, then I think it's really going to continually affect poorly on those asset classes.
And to follow through on that, our numbers sound like they're in alignment. So pre-COVID, we track it on a national basis. Our average equity is like 1.2 to 1.4 in a range. kind of during COVID, things changed, and coming out of COVID, we saw our average equity had dropped to probably the $600,000 to $800,000 range on a national basis. And then early this year, it kind of started to come back. So now we're back to that $1.2 to $1.4 million in average equity. I think if you calculate just California, like Greg said, it's probably going to be a lot higher than that on average equity basis.
Is it safe to say your transaction volumes are up at both your firms?
Ours is triple since last August.
Yeah, I would say that, we're hitting kind of historic numbers with the company. I think, but a lot of it is on the residential side. The commercial side probably started picking up maybe about 6 months ago and started to kind of gain some steam, but the residential market is absolutely insane. And I think, you have people that are doing all kinds of things, people that said, oh, you know what, I think I'll wait a couple years and maybe we'll do something then. During COVID, they thought, you know what, let's not wait, right? Why wait? Let's go ahead and do it. We're going to sell this and exchange it into more passive types of investments like a DST. Let's go ahead and do that now. So, especially people learned during the pandemic, especially our older clients, they had multiple properties located in different areas. With the COVID issues, it became very tough to manage those assets. So, they were looking for more passive types of investments. And we see people that are exchanging into properties that are ultimately maybe their retirement home. So we see a lot of stuff that was happening, but a lot on the residential side for sure.
We're also seeing in Inland, our volume is up in transactions as well. And I'm sure part of it is the fear, right, of this going away, or even the talking about it creates a lot more business right now. Dan, this one's for you. The 721 exchange, the UPREIT, was that mentioned in the proposal?
No, not at all.
And I just have a comment about that. People ask me all the time, they say, well, what will happen to the Delaware Statutory Trust? What would happen to our business in Inland if, exchanges were to go away, say its entirety? One of the things that we could do as an industry is we could UPREIT, right? Create a fund and have people UPREIT, do a 721 exchange into these UPREITs. What we can do is keep those in perpetuity and allow people to exit, give some liquidity out there in the market. So it'd be an opportunity with the DST side for people to be able to continue their exchange indefinitely in perpetuity, as well as have liquidity in the future. So there's some things out there.
That's a great point.
Let's see, next question here. Greg, I know that you have your firm has a site where you can contact the congressman or congresswoman. Do you know this off the top of your head? There's a way to do that. Send out an automated letter.
That we do have a way to Congress. We sent out actually an email to a lot of our clients where they could do it. You can also go to our website, which is IPX1031.com, and there's a button that says Take Action, and you can go ahead and take action. So we've tried to make it as simple as we can for people to send letters, so they really aren't writing a letter themselves. All they're doing is just inputting their data, and they can even opt out of having us in their data, being a part of our database. So we try to make it as simple as we can, because we want to make sure that everybody that we can takes action, and we make it as streamlined as we can for them.
And Bill, your website too, do you have an advocacy portion there or something on the site, or with FEA?
Yeah, we've been working directly with the FEA on that. So it's 1031taxreform.com, and they've got a lot of information. They've got the same type of ability where you can reach out and submit a letter.
What I'm saying is do all the above, right? Right, Dan? Just
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Next question here. It's about feasibility, economic impact. Someone's asking, has there been a study done for the impact to show people in Congress what would happen if they messed with the 1031?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh yeah. So we have the Ernst & Young study. That's a macroeconomic study that just came out. It was for just updated. We have the Link Petrova study that was just updated. Both those studies were used during the last tax reform issue, and now they were updated. And so yeah, there's wonderful white papers that really highlight how people who own they don't they don't renovate, but buyers do. And so that's where you're able to see all the jobs that get created. And that's where Ernst & Young highlighted there's like 568,000 jobs and the synergy that exists in so the other thing is the misnomer that people think that taxes aren't paid, that people continue to do the 1031s, and that's not true. They verified over 80+% of 1031s end in a taxable event, if not more. So yeah, there's lots of data on those websites that will be able to go through all that.
Hey guys, the next question comes from a personal friend of mine. He's a really well-known accountant, Peter McNeil. He asks, there's still a question that a retroactive tax change will violate the due process clause. This has never been litigated, but the opinion of most tax attorneys is that due process clauses would prevent a retroactive tax law change. Any thoughts on that, Dan or Bill?
Well, the question is who's going to file that lawsuit, because basically a lot of individuals wouldn't have a lot of money to file that lawsuit. So you can file a lawsuit anytime you want, but as you saw, the tax laws in the 80s were retroactive. So I guess you can litigate anything. Who's going to pay for that?
I think Dan hit the nail on the head. I agree with your contact. I think that is true, but who's going to pay the bill?
Next question. Do we have an estimate on how much taxes the repeal of step up in basis will generate?
So the National Association of Realtors, they have those numbers. I don't have those off the top of my head. So if you go to the National Association of Realtors website and look under advocacy, I believe they have that listed.
Okay. Another question is, what's the difference between owning the tax on the total gain at death and a step up in basis in terms of tax?
Well, that was interesting because it's very complicated, and Evan Lydiard explained it today. And so I wish the CPA was who just asked the question before. That it's really a great CPA question, because because Evan suggested that getting rid of stepped up basis might have been easier than having to pay the capital gains at death because of the new tax that's put out there. So it actually gains more money by charging capital gains at death than a stepped up basis. So that's a great CPA question, not a Dan Wagner question.
There's a couple questions coming right now all around the same area, talking about what happens if a Delaware statutory trust goes full cycle in an environment where exchanges are eliminated. This is interesting again, because the 721 exchange, if we create an UPREIT, a fund, it's an UPREIT, as the DSTs that you're in now go full cycle into an environment where you could be forced into a taxable event, those DSTs would be rolled into the UPREIT, where you could sit, get your tax deferral, have liquidity in perpetuity in your life.
Yep.
Let's see here. Do you have the contact information?
I'm sorry, that's something they should probably ask questions about too, because I think Inland's been very proactive in that area and kind of planning for the what if, so that clients are protected. But I would bet a number of sponsors probably haven't thought about it yet. So that's certainly a great question, because some sponsors may not be ready for that.
And if they did limit the exchanges to $500,000, the minimum is $100,000 in a DST. So it gives you a lot of options within the DST side. But again, we have the ability in perpetuity to keep rolling it at 721s. Again, keep your tax deferral and give you some liquidity there. This is probably for Dan. I got someone asking for Richard Neal's contact information. Do you have his phone number, email you could give out?
So what you do is just Google it, and it'll. I don't have his number off the top of my head, but I appreciate you think I'm that good. But if you Google Massachusetts, you could call him there. But it really, the better thing, instead of you calling him, the best thing is to call your congressman or woman and have them call him, because that's going to wake them up. Because we know that from all of our contact lobbyists that we know, I'm not a lobbyist, I'm an advocate. For all of the lobbyists that we know, they say that after the congressmen and women come back from their break right now, they're on recess, this is going to be the question that the Congressman Neal is going to ask is, what do your constituents think of this 1031 issue? And when you call Congressman Neal's office, the first question that their staff person is going to ask you is, give me your address. And once they see that you don't live in that district, that it's meaningless. It is totally meaningless to them. It doesn't matter. So don't waste your time. What you need to do is call your congressman or woman, and you need to ring their bell all over the place so that you are their squeaky wheel. And so that when there's that roll call in the House Ways and Means Committee, when they get back the next week and he says, hey, what do you think of the 1031? You want that person to say, oh my God, will you just get rid of this stupid thing so we don't have to be driven crazy? That is the goal, everybody. Honestly, it's human nature. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You have got to contact your elected official, and you got to be able to say, oh my gosh, this is horrible, 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 and give you examples and reasons and all the stuff we talked about. Read up on it. If you want to help save your industry, this is what we all have to do. And, welcome to Politics 101. It's local, local, local. All politics are local. When your congressman or woman staff says, tell me your address, and you show that you're a vote, they look up and like, oh, this is a person that votes. This is a person that lives in the district. You're very important to them. And they will, telling you, they will remember that. And they'd say, please, and they don't have to be on the House Ways and Means Committee. That's even better. And they can be Republican and talk to a Democrat. I mean, they just need to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. So get your clients, get everybody. It's not just you. Get your family members. I mean, do you want to drive? You want to be able to, in the next, short period of time here, let's get this done so we all can enjoy 4th of July. Let's get this off of any radar screen and get the House Ways and Means Committee to say, my God, there's not a chance we're putting that in there. And if you know people personally, it's all about personal relationships. I'm telling you, if you know one of your clients bakes cookies at Christmas time with, your congressman or with Kristen Sinema or whatever, those kind of relationships are gold. They're so important because that's where, you can make a difference. And I bet you, with such an interesting world that we live in, I bet you some people on this call are going to have some of those kind of relationships. And, what's it, the 6 degrees of separation? That's what we got to do.
That's Kevin Bacon, right?
It is.
I thought it was, Charles, your dating history there.
All right, we'll strike that one. There's a question about these automated emails that go out, once you go on to these different sites and send an automated email. Are those taken seriously by the representatives?
So it's like a tote board, so they're able to say, oh, we got 1,000 email letters. I mean, so it sounds better to say 1,000 and say, yeah, we got about 4. So you want to do that, and you want to make your phone calls. And if you can't do a in-person meeting because it's difficult with COVID and stuff, but your phone calls are a big deal. Most congressional offices will be taking phone calls, so do phone calls too.
There's someone asking on the chat here, if there's no bill number now, there's no bill out. What's the best way to describe the 1031 issue to a congressional representative?
You say President Biden has put forth a plan for infrastructure plan, and one of the ways he wants to pay for it is by his proposal is to cap the 1031 like-kind exchange at $500,000, and you want to stop that. So there's no bill; it's the proposal that's going to be turned into a bill. So you're basically suggesting that they know they're going to be baking a cake, and that right now they got to decide if they're going to do a chocolate cake, or, a vanilla cake, whatever it is. And that cake ingredient cannot be the 1031. So you need to make sure that the ingredient that they're starting to buy at the store, that they're figuring out, okay, I got to go buy flour, sugar, and 1031. You want to make sure they buy flour and sugar and not 1031. So that's everything right now. They're in that process. So there's no bill yet. We don't want to be in a bill. The bill is not, that would be very bad if we're in the bill. That means it's still not impossible to stop it, but it makes it even harder. And that's where we have to stop it in the Senate. But there's no bill right now. And that's why Richie Neal we got to get your congressman or woman to just be like, oh my God. Because remember, it's a very small pay for. You're talking trillions of dollars and they're talking 40 billion. It's like, what? And at the last second, it was thrown in there by some Biden staffer. I mean, it wasn't like everybody was talking about, oh, this is going to be a big deal. It was just, it's tiny. And so it just doesn't make sense. And by the way, it's a net taxpayer loss. The transfer taxes, all these things are not going to happen. So it's going to be a tax loss. And obviously the Democrats wouldn't want that. There's a lot of Democrats that were mayors of towns and county officials, and they know how important that transfer tax is. So that it's not logical. We are on the high ground with this argument. And then when you see all these other aspects of our arguments, I mean, it's of our discussion points that you'll see on the websites, we are on the high ground, but again, it's about that relationship and about, what kind of feedback people are getting. And so you have got to contact your elected official and say, take it out of the proposed plan. When you're working on the bill, do not have it in there.
Dan, this is kind of a dangerous question, but you talk to congressional people, staffers, lobbyists on both sides of the different parties out there. You think this will not end up in the final? No one has a crystal ball, right? But if would you think this will be out before? Of course, we need to do everything we can. Assuming it's going to be in there, an ability for.
So Charles, unfortunately, your Wi-Fi is having difficulty, and so, but I think that I believe what you said is, if I have a crystal ball, do I think this is going to be in the final bill for the House? I think that's what you said. So what, knowing all the things I know.
Yes. Okay.
If no one was involved with this and no one said anything, I'd be in the final bill. With everybody on this call, all of the work that everybody's doing, I believe that we're going to be able to wake them up and get it out of the final bill because of all of us working together. If we don't work on it and just assume that someone else is going to do it, then it will be in the bill. But if we all work on it and we all care about our industry, then we are all going to take responsibility for getting it out of the bill. It's not an I, it's a we. We will be responsible. If we don't do the work, then we're not going to win the game. This is game day. We have, Michael Jordan's going to go, we're going to see him do a layup, and he's going to do the layup, but if he doesn't practice like he practiced, he won't make the layup. This is a layup. We got to be able to do it though. We got to be able to make sure we all have done the work that makes it look that easy, so. Yeah. We don't want to flub up the 1 foot putt. I mean, all of us have, right? All of us have flubbed up that putt, but we're not going to, because we're going to be very, very organized. We're going to be very methodical, and we're all going to take responsibility for our industry.
We're coming up on the hour. Some last words, Mr. Exeter. Any last words, thoughts, actions you want to tell everyone?
Yeah, real quick. I've had a couple people that are on the call text me and ask if there's talking points and things like that. And I think it's safe to say that the 3 websites we've referred everybody to would have those talking points. So go to those 3 websites, not only to register your thoughts through the automated emails and things like that, but you can download the talking points that are out there. And that's key. We all have to fight the fight.
Mr. Greg Burns, last thoughts, words?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Dan makes a good point, which is, I know that as soon as the 2017 tax reform bill was passed, they immediately went to the other side of the aisle and started educating, our elected officials on the importance of 1031. And because of that, I think it gives us a tremendous, head start and opportunity to make sure that 1031 doesn't end up in this bill. But I think that it's very important that everybody in here takes action. They go out to their customers who own real estate, and they encourage them to take action. And the reason for that is that if they get such an overwhelming response again on 1031, like they did, when we were just kind of learning things back when the 2017 tax reform bill comes out, then you're going to have people in government that the next time this maybe comes up are going to go, really doesn't generate that much revenue, And it's really important to the real estate community, which is a huge economic engine for the country. I think it's important to just leave it alone. So I think it's really important that, like Dan said, don't leave it up to IPX or Exeter or Inland. Make sure that you get actively involved in it.
Dan, final words? So
your Christmas card lists, your Hanukkah lists, whatever lists you have, family members that care about you, that you care about them. You want to get everybody you can. Not, it's great that you do it. That's one, but you want to get everybody you can to do those letters, and then obviously you want people that understand the issue to talk to your member of Congress. But you have got to reach out and call and touch someone. So there you go. Make sure and do that. And thank you, Charles, for this opportunity. Bill Exeter is a rock star. Exeter, IPX, Greg Burns. I talk to John Wunderlich probably 4 times or 10 times a day. So anyway, God bless all of us. God bless the United States of America and the 1031.
Absolutely. I'll leave the site up here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's a pleasure doing this, and I suspect we'll probably do a lot more of these calls as this bill is running through. So thank you all for being here today. Appreciate it. And just remember, our businesses are all up. Exchanges are still happening right now. So this is not a slowdown or a stop in business. This is just a proposed bill. Get your exchange in now. Thank you all. Thank you so much.